After the 13th Amendment finally became law in 1870, Black people were officially no longer enslaved, but we know there was a big difference between what's official and what really goes on. So Black people in particular, were not as free as were their white counterparts. So they realized that they had to do things for themselves. They had to build a community, and they had to find ways to support each other. They did that in starting up churches and schools and various character building organizations like the Masons and the female counterpart, the Eastern Stars. There were those kinds of organizations in the area. The Prince Hall Masons, by the way, date to 1784. So that was shortly after the United States itself was created. And obviously that would have been free Blacks who were forming that organization. One of the organizations that was more local to Rockdale, and particularly to Conyers, was called the Moral Elevation Society. That started in 1890 by a man named Robert B. Carr. He was a pastor of Shady Grove Baptist Church. The organizations came into being like so many institutions in Black life. It came into being because Black people were being denied any kind of insurance coverage. So the Moral Elevation Society was one of those organizations that provided burial benefits and also some money to help with the widows and the orphans. The Moral Elevation Society group at Shady Grove was joined later by Old Pleasant Hill Baptist Church and Peaks Chapel. So they merged, and for years they would assess themselves dues, but they would have fundraisers. There would be rallies at various churches, and with the idea that the money collected in that offering would go to the work of the society. So he told the story of a guy named Barry Hudson, who was pretty much crushed to death when he was cutting down trees and one of them fell on him. But the part that got my attention was this. He belonged to the Colored Odd Fellows Lodge, and his family will receive $300 from them. He also belonged to the Burial Association, which paid his burial expenses, end of quote. So that shows how people had to, there's a phrase we use, they had to make a way out of no way. Not every activity involving advancing the community came about in groups that were organized with officers and dues and bylaws. Often this kind of doing good for the community emerged in very informal ways. The Citizens Progressive Club came into being in part to build a playground so that Black kids would have some recreational space. So organizations that we know today, like the Citizens Progressive Club, the NAACP, and a number of social clubs that really have a charitable bent, they stem from a long and very proud tradition here in Rockdale County.